Hello, welcome to this video. My name is Rhianna and I recently finished Words of Radiance by Sanderson. This is the second book in the Stormlight archive. So the first book is Way of Kings. This is the second. I read Way of Kings last year and it was my favourite book of the year. So this year I wanted to get to Words of Radiance. These books are pretty long. So this book I believe is over 1,000 words. I did listen to it on audiobook. The audiobook is read by Michael Kramer and Kate Reading, and they're fantastic. So Michael does the chapters from male perspectives and Kate does the chapters from female perspectives, and they're really good at doing the voices of the different characters as well. Like Dalinar has a specific tone when speaking, Kaladin has a specific tone, and when Kate is reading from Shallan's perspective, her voice for Patton, Shallan's friend, is also really good. And it's quite hard to explain what these books are about. I attempted to do so. I filmed this intro the other day and I attempted to explain Way of Kings and it took me like 20 minutes. I feel like this video is going to be really long if I do that again. So let me say that Way of Kings is about three protagonists. We have Shallan, Kaladin and Dalinar, and they exist within this fantasy realm. Shallan is the ward to a scholar named Yashna, and she's trying to steal Yashna's fabrial, which is this magical sphere. And she's trying to do that by like getting on Yashna's good side, making her trust her, and stealing it under her nose. And Kaladin is sold into slavery and he is part of this bridge crew named Bridge 4, and he has to run this bridge back and forth so the army can cross these chasms and try and get these gemstones. And a lot of the bridge people die because the opposite army, the Bashendis, shoot arrows at them because they don't want them to be able to put the bridge down so the armies can cross. And he's in a pretty low place and he has to try and rise up from the ashes of that situation that he's in. And then we have Dalinar. He is a high prince. So at the beginning of Way of Kings, his brother is killed and he is trying to deal with the political fallout of that. So that's roughly what the book is about. And you really get to know the different characters. And Way of Kings, in a way, kind of feels like a prologue. And then you're so rewarded when reading Words of Radiance because like everything is kind of set up in Way of Kings and then it just comes to a head in Words of Radiance, and it was just one of the most enjoyable reading experiences I've ever had. And yeah, in this video I talk a little bit about my thoughts throughout the reading process, and yeah, I hope you enjoy. So I'm just at work at the moment eating my porridge and I've listened to the prologue, and in Way of Kings the prologue began with the murder of King Dalinar, and we see it from the perspective of the assassin. And in this prologue we see the same events but from the perspective of Dalinar's daughter Yashna. And yeah, it was a really great beginning because it sort of reminds you of the beginning of Way of Kings and reminds you of like where sort of the story begins from, which is from Dalinar's death. And yeah, I love Yashna. She's one of my favourites. She's so wise and has so many great like thoughts and lines. You know, I said I think in the last video that I loved Yashna, and I still do, and that's why it was sad when she got murdered. At first I was like, maybe she's not dead, like maybe she somehow managed to fake her own death, which still could be true, but I feel like it's not. I feel like she did just die. So we are introduced to our three main characters from the first book again, Kaladin, Shallan and Dalinar. And Shallan is my favourite, love Shallan. And she's on a boat with Yashna, and they're travelling to the Shattered Plains, which is where Kaladin and Dalinar are. And so then Shallan has to go out on her own. The boat gets shipwrecked, and then Shallan gets washed up on the shore. She meets these like merchants who sell people, but she manages to assert her authority over them because of what Yashna has taught her, and she does this quite a few times with these soldiers as well, which inspires me to like be a bit more confident too, because like if you like seem like you're in charge, people are more likely to treat you like you are in charge. She meets this woman named Tin, and Tin is like a con artist, and immediately I didn't like her because Well, usually I like con artists, you know, I love Liza Locklamora. Love someone who's pretending to be someone they're not. But I know I just didn't trust her, and my instincts were correct. So Tin was involved in the assassination of Yashnar, and Shallan learns this and then kills her, and that's like the end of part 2. Also, so much else happened. Like, Shallan meets Kaladin, and then she ends up like taking Kaladin's boots because she pretends that she was offended. And that was kind of funny. One other thing I wanted to mention as Shallan is quite funny. One of the soldiers says to her that you have quite a tongue on you, and Shallan is like, I've never had a tongue on me, weirdo. Like, she doesn't get the idiom. Also, yes, we have Kaladin, and Kaladin, love him. Like, I love how he started in the last book as like a bridge man in a low, really low point, and he's like built himself up to now being a bodyguard of the Cullen family, and his narrative arc is just brilliant. And we meet the bridge crew again, like Rock and Tuft and Molash, and they're like, the gang is all there. And yeah, Kaladin goes through some somewhat embarrassing moments in part 1 and 2. He tries to fight Adolin and fails, and he tries to take this beautiful white horse, I think it was, and he's like, that horse is cool, I'm gonna try and ride it. And he says that he wants to ride it because it scares him too, and he wants to like do the things that scare him. Then what happens? Seth, the guy who murdered the king at the beginning of Way of Kings, turns up to assassinate Dalinar, and it's quite a cool moment where they think he's there for the king, and then Seth is like, no, I'm here for you, Dalinar. It's like, oh damn. And then Kaladin fights him, and it's such an epic scene, both of them fighting together. They fall out a window, and then Seth realizes that Kaladin also has these powers, and he's like, oh, I'm gonna head out. And he leaves. And Kaladin's kind of trying to keep his powers like under wraps because he's worried that like the Cullen family will try to take the powers if they find out he has them, because he's like suspicious of Light Eyes because of Amaram, who turns up. Amaram betrayed him before, and it's made Kaladin have these trust issues, and then Amaram turns up and he's like, I hate you. Well, actually, he hasn't actually revealed himself to Amaran, because, you know, he's like, that wouldn't be good probably, because Amaran would try to ruin his life. But he tells Dalinar that Amaran betrayed him, and Dalinar's like, I'll take that information, but like, I can't go just based on your word. Also, we see more of Adolin Cullen, who Shallan is like betrothed to. And I loved how when Yashna told Shallan that she was betrothed to Adolin, Shallan wasn't like, oh my god, like, what do you mean? She was like, actually, great plan, I would love that. And I'm totally with Shallan. Like, Adolin is kind of obnoxious and arrogant, but he's also, you can't help but root for him. He has a good heart, actually. I love all that kind of like secrets and political like intrigue, and like trying to like trust people, and also reveal like the right information to the right people. Love all that stuff. There's a lot of that going on here. So it's a few days later, and I've now finished part 3, and I'm so enjoying this book. It's just so much fun. So I want to talk about Shallan first, because she's like one of my new favourite characters of all time, and a lot happens in part 3 with her. So she arrives at the Shadowed Plains, she meets Adolin and all the other guys there, and she goes to stay with this guy called Sabarial, because she doesn't want to stay like with Dalinar, and she doesn't want to be like monitored so severely. So she makes a correct decision in front of all these high princes to try and make it seem like Sabarial has agreed to let her go stay with him, and he's like, yeah, sure, that was what happened. And so then Shallan goes to stay with Sabarial, who says quite a nice quote. He says, I try to hit everyone, that way I don't leave anyone out who is particularly deserving. And Shallan has this, I don't know if I mentioned, I can't remember what I said in the last part that I filmed, but she has a spren called Patton, and he gives her these powers, and so she can now like shapeshift and make herself look different. And so she tries to infiltrate these ghost bloods, which are the group that killed Yashna. So she's trying to infiltrate them so she can work out like what they're planning, why they killed Yashna. And those scenes are really great. I love like when a character's like undercover with the bad group, because there's just so much tension there. She also has to break into Amaran's like mansion, because she has to do like a heist mission to try and find out information that Amaran has, and she manages to succeed in doing that. And he has like all these maps of the Shadow Plains. I feel like I kind of understand. So there's this place called Urithiru, which is like this secret city, and it might be like in the middle of the Shadow Plains or something like that. Also, Shallan and Adolin have some really cute scenes. They go on this date, and they speak quite unconventionally. So Shallan asks him what it's like when he's in his shard plate, which is quite hard to take off, and what it's like if he needs to go to the toilet, he's on the battlefield. And Adolin finds it quite comical that she asks like quite an unconventional question, and it seems like they really pair well with each other and they have quite a sweet relationship. The end of part 3 is so dramatic. So Adolin is going to fight the I can't remember the name, this other High Prince, and he thinks that the High Prince can bring one other person to fight in the duel, but it turns out that he didn't choose his words specifically enough, and he in fact said that he will fight the High Prince and whoever he brings with him. So the High Prince brings 3 others, so then there's 4 people that Adolin has to fight in this duel, which is a lot. And so Adolin is really struggling to fight, and like the kingdoms are watching. And then his brother Renarin comes in, and Renarin, bless him, he's not a good fighter, and he's a sweet character. Actually, I kind of relate to him because I would be terrible at fighting too. And then Kaladin's like, God damn it, I'm just gonna have to go in there and try and help these 2 brothers. And him and Adolin, yeah, they have a funny relationship. They kind of hate each other, but I feel like that's gonna grow to like a good friendship. And so they fight together and they fight really well and they win the duel. Woohoo. But then, because they won the duel, Adolin is offered a boon from the king, and this means that he has like a wish that he can make, and that was the plan all along. So the plan was that Adolin would get this boon, and then Adolin could say, I want to fight Sadeas right here, right now. However, that doesn't work out because Kaladin is like, I just won this duel too, I also get a boon, and Amaran is in the audience, his sworn enemy who betrayed him and took his sharp blade and killed all his friends, and he's like, I want to fight Amaran as well. And then it's kind of funny, I mean it's also tragic, but in the book, in Kaladin's mind, he sees like soldiers go to arrest someone, and he's like, oh, Amaran's being arrested, it's finally justice. And they actually arrest him because Kaladin is a Dark Eyes and he's a much lower rank than all of the High Princes, and he just accused a High Prince of quite severe crimes, and so that's like treasonous, and so he gets arrested. Hello, so I've now finished part 4 and I've started part 5. I'm getting very close to the end of the book, and I loved part 4. It was probably my favourite part so far because we get a lot of Shallan and a lot of Kaladin, and they're my 2 favourite characters. So what happens is Adolin, Shallan and Kaladin go out to the Shadow Plains because Shallan wants to do some research, and then Shallan and Kaladin end up falling into a chasm with some other people because a bridge breaks. They survive because they're part of the Knights Radiant, as seems to be evident now. Shallan still has Patton, her spren, but Kaladin can't find Syl, his spren. He heard her scream and now she's gone. And he doesn't know why she's gone, and that means he's lost his powers. And Syl referenced in one of the earlier chapters that he needs to speak the words in order for, I don't know, for it to be like properly connected to her or something. Anyway, we don't know what these words are, but I feel like once he speaks them, Syl's going to come back. And it's a bit of a learning curve for him as well, because he was getting quite angry at everything, I feel. And I love Kaladin, and I can totally understand why he's angry because he's been through a lot. But he was just getting quite frustrated, and he was agreed to kill the king. And I just don't feel like that was what truthfully he would have done deep down, in my opinion, because because he really values and respects Dalinar, and I think he wouldn't go against Dalinar, and I think he does know deep down that it's the wrong thing to kill the king, because the king, I mean, he's pretty bad, and he was the reason Rashar ended up going to Kaladin's hometown and causing his brother to go to war. Everything's connected, but like that was because he had bad counsel, and I don't think the king's like inherently bad, he's just very easily influenced and is a bit dumb. Anyway, then Kaladin and Shallan, they don't really see eye to eye and they bicker quite a bit, which is quite amusing. They both have really strong wit, and so they're like throwing insults back and forth. But deep down they're very similar, and they both have the same powers, but they don't know that each other has these powers. Shallan thinks she's saved Kaladin from the fall, and Kaladin thinks he saved Shallan from the fall. And Shallan is very optimistic, which I love. I love that about her. Like the chasm fiend is trying to get them, and she's like, wow, that's so interesting. Like, honestly, if like a big chasm fiend was trying to get me, I'd be so scared. But Shallan's perspective encourages me to be a bit more curious and open to the world. Kaladin is a bit more pessimistic, and so their relationship is really like so fun to read about. And there's a part where I can't remember who says it. Shallan, I think, says it. She says, "We're down, like, help!" Because they're screaming from the chasms, "Help! We're down here and we're making bad puns. Please save us from ourselves." And she has a lot of humour. I think it brings out Kaladin's like more hopeful side as well. And then also Shallan reveals that she was the one to murder her father. Kaladin, prior to this, didn't really like Shallan because he thought she was just really privileged and had never known a bad thing, which is why she was so optimistic. But he realizes that she actually has had hardship and knows what it means to struggle, and so that allows him to open up a bit more to her. So I've now finished Words of Radiance by Brandon Sanderson. What a book, what a book. And the final part 5, is so epic, so much happened. One of my new favourite moments in books ever is when Kaladin, so Seth turns up the assassin and he shoots Dalinar into the sky, he yeets Dalinar, and then you think Dalinar's gone, but then of course Kaladin turns up. Kaladin can now like ride on the wind, and so he saves Dalinar, brings him back to the ground, and then he says, such an epic line, he says to Seth, "You sent him to the skies to die, assassin, but the sky and the winds are mine. I claim them, as I now claim your life." There's also another epic moment in part 5 with Kaladin. So he thinks Scylla's dead and he's lost his powers, and he then realises that perhaps the reason for this occurring is because he was going down a path that was not true to him. So he was trying to kill the king, and he realised that that wasn't the right thing to do. And he then tries to protect the king from Molash, his like friend, and also Graves, another assassin. And he says the words, speak the words. He says, "I will protect those I hate as long as it is right." And as he speaks these words, Syl returns, he gets his powers back, and Molash and Graves, who are trying to kill the king, are like, oh damn, because now Kaladin is like back to his full powers. And also Kaladin and Seth fight like in the sky, and like shattered lanes are shot into the sky, and then they like run across them. I know, like envisioning it was such a feast for the imagination. And then Kaladin thinks he's killed Seth, but then we get a chapter, or like a small bit from a chapter from Seth's perspective, where he thinks he's dead, but he actually wakes up, and he I don't really know what's going on with that. He gets taken by this guy to, I don't know. I guess it's going to be clear in the next book, but Seth, not quite dead yet. Oh, and then we get the scene with Adolin and Sadeas, and I really didn't think Sadeas was going to die, because he is such an antagonist in the book, and he's also really, as awful as he is, he's a really great character. But I was also kind of like feeling like it would make sense narratively for Adolin to kill him in that moment. Because you quite, by the end of the book, you understand his character quite well, and I feel like that is quite true to his character, because he really does hate Sadeas, and he feels quite guilty after he does it, because he just killed a high prince, and he tries to get rid of the evidence, but I feel like that will come into play in the next book. Like, I feel like the other high princes might learn that Adolin killed Sadeas and rise up against the Colin family, which could cause some issues. And then the book ends on quite a cliffhanger. So you have the Parshendi, who are like the enemies to the Alethi, and they turn into Voidbringers. So that's what's going on with Eshonai. Like, she turned into a Voidbringer, and she kind of knows something's not right, but like she's like brainwashed, and she's like brainwashed other Parshendi as well. And then there's these Parshmen, which are kind of like Parshendi, kind of like human, if I'm understanding right. And what's going to happen next is those Parshmen are going to turn into Voidbringers, and Parshmen exist in the households of a lot of Alethi, because they're like the servants of the Alethi, and so that means that suddenly like a lot of households in the human areas are going to be overcome by Voidbringers. But we now have the Knights Radiance back. So Kaladin is a Knights Radiant, Shallan is, Dalinar is 2, and Yashna is 2. Oh my god, Yashna? She's not dead. Which is great because I love Yashna. And that's how the book ended. So I'm not going to rush into the next one. I waited a year between Way of Kings and Words of Radiance. I don't think I want to wait quite as long, but I think I just need a bit of time because this book took up a lot of my life for the past month, and I think it just takes some time to like let this book sink in and think a little bit more about what happened in this book, and then I would jump into the next one. So thank you very much for watching this video. I imagine it's quite long, but if you made it to the end, thank you very much. Let me know some of your thoughts on this series because I would love to have a chat in the comments, and I'll see you in another video soon. Bye bye.